Hello and welcome everybody to tonight's stream in another match in the NieR Automata A-ending tournament. Very quickly here tonight we have Fullest facing MT. And I'm pretty excited for tonight's match. This is going to be quite interesting between these two runners. Both of them are quite similar in times. This will be a matchup, essentially to see who can get sub 130. I think it's difficult to call this one, really. It is going to come down to a good couple of skips tonight for today's stream. I see Fullest is paying attention in chat, and it looks like we're in our countdown here.
We are perpetually trapped.
So good luck to tonight's runners. This is going to be quite exciting.
Is this a curse?
I'm hyped. I hope you guys are as well. Somebody's audio.
God who blessed us with this cryptic puzzle, and wonder if we'll ever have the chance to kill him.
So, if you are just joining us for the first time, if you've never seen NieR Automata or tonight's tournament match and any of the other tournament matches that we've been having over the past little while, us in the NieR Automata speedrunning community have put together this tournament. Initially, there were 32 runners in the first phase, and since then we have moved on to phase 2, where the top 16 have moved on to phase 2 in double elimination. And tonight, as another continuation in round 2 here between Fullest and MT. This is going to be quite close. I do believe we'll have a pretty good matchup tonight here, ladies and gentlemen.
Alert. Enemy unit sighted ahead.
But NieR Automata is one of our favorite games from 2017, and at least hopefully tonight we'll show a pretty good amount of first major ending and how much we can break it. Please do let us know if the audio is weird. I might be getting some feedback here.
1D down. Assuming captain's duty.
But moving on into this opening section here, essentially both runners are in flight unit, taking down these flying machines in front of them, sort of like a top-down like flying game, but we will be seeing a good number of these perspective changes like we see right now, where the game transitions into a different sort of control scheme, although rather similar to what we were just using, where it's now a twin-stick shooter. And we'll see multiple changes like this throughout the rest of the run as well. And it's definitely going to be interesting between these two runners at that. One thing that is worth mentioning between both runners here in this opening couple minutes is the sort of scripted lasers that they were taking damage from, and we'll see probably here as they approach the factory area that they'll be taking some intentional damage. That's going to be useful for at least quickening some of the menuing that both runners will have to be doing ever so slightly as they encounter some of these bosses. But we will be transitioning into 3D gameplay in just a little bit here, but you can really see how the camera sort of moves around the area It sort of changes the control scheme, sorry there. But both runners here have this down to a science in the opening section. Prologue is probably the most dense section of a ending. The first 15 minutes or so is definitely a handful of tricks.
Yes, I'm aware of
So transitioning into 3D gameplay here in front of these machine life forms here in the first silo. Both runners are going to be doing a move that allows us to deal about 4.5 times damage. For some reason, it is still possible to deal this ridiculous amount of damage with such a simple move. Simply having a short sword on the heavy slot of our weapon set and doing a dash a couple frames after, or doing a heavy attack after a dash, I should say, promptly increases our damage by about 4.5 times, and it is pretty silly how fast we can melt through some of these bosses. In comparison, in a normal playthrough, or rather in a casual playthrough, these boss fights and encounters would definitely take a lot longer. And some of the tricks we'll be seeing definitely go to break that even further here. Fullest pulling out ahead of the first little mini-boss there, marks 1 ever so slightly, but we'll see 2B's amazing aerial movement here, climbing up on top of one of these bridges, and then up onto the crane. Still in the opening moments of Prologue here, but you can kind of see Fullest has a little bit more polish on some of these tricks here over MT, doing a couple extra inputs here. This is the first 15 minutes of this run is going to come down to some of those small optimizations that we see between these runners. So both runners taking advantage of slowing down the world around them to get close up to some of those melee attacking stubbies, and also taking advantage of the laser itself, so that way we can kill multiples of these enemies in the prologue here. So both runners and exiting Silo 2 basically at the same time. Fullest messing up first try, MT messing up first try bridge, and looks like both runners recovering on a second try bridge skip. That is a very precise high jump we had just seen. Scaling that bridge there definitely saves some time and is rather precise even for experienced runners. They're basically maximizing the amount of height that they gain from each attack that they do, and of course going immediately out of bounds to traverse this sort of lava area. Fullest opting to do a strategy that Marbles designed, to my knowledge. Breaking those shields on those stubbies is a little inconvenient, at least in my opinion, because it groups up those enemies a little bit weird, but sometimes you can actually get good lasers on those enemies. Very nice execution there from Fullest on taking out all 5 of those stubbies in one fell swoop with a damage glitch, well placed, and a very well placed laser, although MT not too far behind Fullest at this point either. Fullest getting a 803 Silo 3 exit, still very respectable, and MT maybe about 10 seconds behind. Fullest opting to go for a little bit of swag there, and of course that was another instance of a high jump, but using a little bit of different tech. We'll be using a little bit later in the prologue here.
I guess even they get bad intel from time to time, huh?
Technique that we've seen on Fullest's perspective, going over one of those building-like machines. This oil rig machine definitely goes to show how broken some of the map sections are. Just being able to traverse areas that you otherwise wouldn't really think you could. But both runners are going to be looking to take down this secondary boss here, Marks 2, without slowing down time too much. Looks like Fullest got an okay Marks 2, just above the health threshold, but he fortunately did not have to laser. If he would have lasered, then that would have cost him a little bit of time because the boss animations determine the end of the fight, and so long as the boss is at the end of its threshold, then it will transition into the next section of the game. Big boy Engels here, dropping down, breaking the bridge, and continuing on in Prologue. This guy is really mean, and for one reason and one reason only, because of punches. And for the moment, both runners are going to be looking to get some melee attacks on the boss, so that way he can be damage threshold. But in a little bit here, we will be experiencing a little bit of RNG, and I'm praying for both runners to have good RNG here. We'll talk about that in just a little bit here, but you can really see the effects of slow-mo on Fullest's perspective, where as he's holding a pod program, a cooldown ability in our little minigun machine over our shoulder, you can really see how much it slows down the game. And MT's perspective as well. Fullest fortunately getting a ranged attack there, and we'll see what MT gets. Punches! No! Oh, dude, that's unfortunate. So, the reason why we hate punches is because the attack that MT is getting out of Engels there, and you can almost see the time loss in and of itself here between these two runners, in that punches will put MT back at a disadvantage of about 23 seconds or so. Pure RNG on which attack Engels chooses, and that's definitely going to cement Fullest in the lead here, unless Fullest messes up anything later on in the prologue. So it looks like we're at an opposing choice here between these two runners. Fullest opting to go on the right pipe and MT opting to go on the left pipe. It is an ongoing debate in the NieR speedrun community as to which pipe is the best. And MT showing off a little bit of swag there on the left pipe. I do consider myself a left piper. I'm glad to say that. On Fullest's screen here, we'll see an instance of a double lift. I'd alluded to that earlier, where part of the high jump that he had just done there, while performing it up a slope, the action of doing what's called a lift, a really relatively high gain in altitude, can actually be reset when moving uphill. And we just saw MT execute that again. And we're able to take advantage of that incredible gain in height in a couple instances. We had seen it earlier from Fullest, and again, as we were climbing up the Engels machine. And we will see that instance more later on in the run. I'll try to point it out if we can, but we might just have other things in mind here. Now, since both runners are back in the flight unit here, they're both going to be waiting for a specific instance where the dialogue between 9S and 2B and Engels' attacks really sort of line up between each other. That's going to make it so that way the phases basically transition instantly, but however, because Engels is a really mean boy, he always chooses sort of an inconvenient attack there. You can see Fullest losing maybe about 5 seconds or so to a swing before Engels begins his scripted punch into the flight unit there.
Enemy unit. Marking weak point. Got it.
So this is looking to be a pretty good prologue out of Fullest here. I would say about 1435, closer to 1440 I would probably say for Fullest. Taking Prologue by storm. And MT not too far behind, although it will be close for MT to close out Prologue, sub 15 minutes here. Although getting punches was definitely a large setback for MT. Still sub 15-minute Prologue from MT, which is very nice and very respectable from both runners. And as we transition into the bunker here, we're going to be doing a good amount of mashing. We're going to be doing some setup and a little bit of questing as well. So, fortunately, we get to do our settings, as every game should take you through the settings.
Morning.
Well, only some of them. Obviously, we want to make that time very, very limited, and it's actually a little bit of a roller coaster when performing these setup options here. All the different mashing and inputs are definitely something to get used to. But this can easily turn pretty easily between these two runners here. Fullest opting to do a specific partner dialogue cancel with 9S there in front of the save points. That will enable him to skip some dialogue that exists in front of them, and is basically going to make it so that way he can cancel that dialogue and walk right on through, and looks like we'll see a different technique from MT. He's doing same execution, still very nice, but Fullest taking a small lead over MT in these opening moments here.
A2B, why do you think they sent a combat model like you to a recon job? If all they want is intel.
But you will notice
built for that
a
kind of
little
thing.
bit later on, once we enter the city ruins, we will be doing a little bit different of movement. We had briefly seen both runners doing a sort of dash punch in the bunker as their movement, and we'll see it more in the city ruins. And as the run evolves, we'll also see that movement change. A little bit of an interesting strategy from Fullest there. He was a little bit farther away than Wit from the enemies. They were coming onto the screen there. Obviously, in these flight unit sections, we want to be dealing our damage out as quickly as we possibly can to all these different units. Fullest barely let that fidget spinner escape off screen. That could have been a serious time loss for Fullest, but that was a very nice save. But the goal for most of these shoot 'em up sections there is to basically take care of these enemies as quickly as we possibly can. MT not having any serious issues with the fidget spinner enemies, which is very nice. Those enemies are very mean sometimes, because when they do their spinning attack, hence fidget spinners, will just eat all of your ranged attacks and some of your melee attacks. But most of our damage does come from that ranged attack. And you'll notice here the dash punching that I had alluded to just a little bit ago, where both runners are doing a dash and a quick punch afterwards, and then canceling it with another dash to continue forward on. That's a little bit faster than just doing strict dashing, and we'll see that sort of evolve in the opening here into the resistance quests. It looks like MT had missed a sort of jump reset off of one of the concrete barricades there. Small time loss, but not too major. What is more major is making their way through these quests here as quickly as they possibly can. The mashing that's involved here is a little bit tricky because you do have to select the right option for the quest to be accepted, and I definitely know the feel of being too stressed out and selecting the wrong option multiple times. So both of these runners being hyper-focused as they make their way through the city ruins.
That should be enough. Let's get these back to the trader. Plant life has claimed most of the central area. Big plants, too.
Report. Records show that vegetation has grown to an abnormal size since the departure of humans.
So, one thing that is worth mentioning here is one of the quests that we do here on Fullest's screen in particular, the items that we need for that quest to complete are dropped off of specific enemies in that group, and unfortunately it's sometimes RNG on where those enemies are placed, but Fullest knows exactly which enemies to look for and complete that quest as efficiently as possible. So now that Fullest has all the materials that he needs from those fetch quests, and once he turns them in, he's going to upgrade his sword to level 2. That's a reason because of the base damage increase for the sword from levels 1 to 2, but also because of a special ability that the sword gets from having a faster attack speed as a special property of the sword itself. That's going to make a good amount of our movement here a little bit faster, as well as our damage with the sword itself. So the sort of cartwheeling that you can see 2B doing on Fullest's screen is another form of movement that is, again, slightly faster than dash punching. So ever so slight increments in speed as we made our way through the first opening moments here. Making our way out to the desert camp here. But it's also worth mentioning that between each of these so-called dash swings here that we see both runners doing, they do need to be careful in that if they do mess up the inputs, which is just a long dash into a quick heavy attack tap, that if they time the inputs wrong, then they could potentially lose the amount of time that they would have gained from like the previous 5 dash swings. So despite the animation not saving that much time, it definitely adds up over a long run. And in particular here, we're going to be buying a couple items from the resistance camp, a couple animal baits, a couple buffs, and a specific plug-in chip as we pick up the desert camp transporter and immediately go out of bounds. This out of bounds is very convenient in traversing the opening to the desert area as well, and we'll also be going out of bounds very shortly here. MT not too far behind Fullest, but there's definitely a lot of ground here for MT to catch up on, going into effectively the first, I would say, boss encounter. Not immediately, but Fullest unfortunately falling out of the out-of-bounds area, falling victim to the desert area discovery cutscene skip, he's able to clip out of bounds and basically skirt around the outside of the map there, traverse to a certain point in the tunnel to pick up a specific trigger that will load the rest of the triggers in the desert area. And we'll see MT also attempting to clip out there, but having a little bit of difficulty. Now, the reason why I had sort of worried there for Fullest is because when he had fallen out of the map, essentially, that would have cost, or that did cost him a good amount of time, but it looks like MT might have also had some issues there clipping out on that barricade. So one of the small detours that we do in the run itself is to, in the desert, to pick up one of the pods, one of the abandoned pods that we can just pick up in the world. And that's for a specific reason for later on in the route. That's so that way we can deal more damage in our flight unit and just take advantage of a couple extra pod program cooldowns. Unfortunate that Fullest mistimed his jumps on the infamous Don Burrows machine. He would have been able to put Tubi a little bit closer to the cutscene there, but unfortunately missed out on his window of opportunity. Let's see if MT gets a little bit better luck in just a little bit here, but Fullest is going to be going pretty deep into the desert housing area, executing a pretty nice skip found by Marky. Again, most of these skips are found by our resident glitch hunter, Marky. Blessed Marky. But this skip in particular that we see on Fullest's screen, called Desert Housing Skip, is going to save him a whopping 30 some odd seconds in going out of bounds, but he also needs to pick up a couple triggers here. And once he does so, in this sort of mess of apartment buildings, he also needs to hop down to the platform there, which is very lucky that he didn't end up plunging too off angle. That caused it so that way he got the trigger on the platform and immediately fell down to the bottom of the pit, which instantly triggers the next phase. Funny enough, you don't actually have to be on that platform and fall down off of the platform for it to work. That was interesting. Fullest was actually able to... Did he kill the... Wow. I'm impressed. Fullest was able to throw a damage glitch as the cutscene triggered. I've never seen that before. I've only seen that in New Game Plus. I've never seen that in New Game. That is quite incredible from Fullest there. But the reason why I'm impressed with that is because otherwise you would have to wait for that cutscene to end for you to damage that particular machine. That machine is important is because it triggers the rest of this phase and this really long dialogue of this cannot continue to then continue on the next phase. And the earlier we can trigger that, the better. And I'm really surprised Fullest got that. That is amazing. Transitioning into phase 1 of Adam here. Fullest does need to be careful on some of his damage here, in that damaging the boss too slowly can actually cause him to miss out on some time save. But so long as his damage glitches are true, then he gets it no problem. But one thing that is worth mentioning here in the desert area is that both runners did switch off their weapon sets, so that way both sets are equipped with the short sword on the heavy slot for both weapon sets. That's going to allow them to throw a damage glitch with a dash and a heavy attack on one weapon set, then switch their weapon sets and do the same move set over and over and over again. That will enable them to have two damage glitches spinning almost simultaneously, which is very handy for our DPS when taking down bosses here. MT going into Adam 1 here. We'll see how he does as well. But Fullest having a pretty dang nice run. I do have to say that is a very, very sexy start to Fullest's run here. Hyper-focused mode for Fullest, approaching Swag Box. Now, this particular trick here that Fullest is lining up for, very nice first try clip. He pushed the box a very specific amount of distance, so that way he can do a pod launch and immediately dash off to the left to clip out of bounds. And because he was able to pick up the save transporter, or the save point in the desert camp, he was able to enter the save area of that transporter and basically save his game, load his game, and be transported immediately to the desert camp. So that effectively displaces 2B to the desert camp with no time loss, and that is a very nice strategy. I do have to say, I'm quite impressed by that Fullest. Oh baby, I'm feeling this right now. MT also setting up for Swag Box here, opting to do a little bit of a different strategy of dashing all the way backwards and doing a pod launch. That puts sort of a different twist to the clip. I'm not entirely certain how it changes the clip, but it does make that clip slightly easier for some runners, and MT definitely takes full advantage of that technique to clip out there, which is very handy for him indeed.
Just like androids, right?
Right.
But we androids were modeled after our human creators. So why would machines try to look like us?
And
There's
Fullest
no point
making his
trying
way
solve
to
the
the
problem.
amusement park. I feel like Fullest is going to play this quite safe. Fullest has mentioned that he will not be going for auto-scroller coaster skip that we have seen other runners try and attempt and
What are those?
fail and sometimes succeed. We have seen some successes this tournament in the particular skip I'm talking about,
Oh,
but
this is weird.
I don't believe we'll see any fanciness from Fullest nor MT tonight. Both runners wanting to play this completely safe. To my knowledge, at least. We'll see if either runner has some confidence in the skip itself. But quickly here, Fullest going completely out of bounds of the amusement park area. Fortunately, one of those buildings has a specific location that you can just plunge into and
If they aren't
reach
hostile,
the out of bounds area, and through some careful finagling, we were able to get the trigger for the roller coaster to spawn and take us into the Beauvoir fight. So now that Fullest is on the roller coaster here, I just want to quickly pivot to MT as he unfortunately gets the discovery cutscene into the amusement park area. That's going to cost MT a couple more seconds in addition to some of the time loss he had initially.
So what do you think?
That's going to be a little unfortunate, but still,
I mean, if you want to call me Nines, it's totally
I still
okay.
think this can go either way. I do believe in MT to pull this through, but we'll have to see how Fullest's run is actually going here. His early game was very strong, and we'll see if it can end strong as well. MT also going out of bounds here. Getting a specific trigger along the ground here in one of the corners of this building, right before going back in bounds and going up onto the roller coaster. Fortunately, the roller coaster is a little bit of a nice break. It's very sort of easy combat. MD actually switching 9S's behavior there. That's an interesting technique. Because we do have a little bit of time to basically stall there with no dialogue to play, that is a good choice if MT changes out different partner behaviors. But Fullest making his way into the Beauvoir fight. He's gonna melt her down. What else are we gonna do? But Beauvoir is a very nice and elegant boss fight. Casually, but unfortunately in the speedrun, we really sort of decimate her. Our damage output is really obnoxious. It's pretty strong, especially on large targets like Beauvoir. We're able to make full use of our double damage glitch. Having 2 spinning swords dealing all that damage is super nice.
Are we seriously being attacked with dead androids?
And transitioning into another one of Beauvoir's phases there. That's an interesting decision there from Fullest to use a laser to take out some of those crucifixes. It has been shown that you can get a good number of those with one laser, but the main idea there is to not get hacked and lose any time, but unfortunately Fullest getting hacked twice. Unfortunate from those stray projectiles. Ooh, for a split second, it looked like he was going to get a 3rd down. I spoke too soon. 3 hacks out of Fullest there. Transitioning to the final couple phases for Beauvoir. But because we're able to deal so much damage to Beauvoir herself, a lot of her sort of individual waves and attacks really sort of get truncated. But that's no matter, we don't want to deal with any of those attacks. A lot of them are kind of scary too, so we're kind of happy that we really just sort of DPS her down and take care of her. One thing that is worth mentioning there is immediately as Fullest killed Beauvoir, he had self-destructed.
That machine had some pretty weird.
No, that's not just for the booty. We actually want the 1 HP effect that we're left at for future skip.
I guess.
And just a little bit here, we will be seeing a mandatory death in the run. Not immediately, but at least in a couple minutes. From Fullest's perspective. A couple frame drops there from MT, but that might just be on Twitch's end. As Fullest securing his lead in this race pretty solidly. I do have to say I'm still quite impressed by that early game from Fullest. Quite amazing, to say the least. I've never seen something like that fast, but incredible to say the least. MT also deciding to self-destruct at the very end of Beauvoir there. It's a very convenient time to be self-destructing because the cutscene that plays as Beauvoir is killed actually causes the long stumble animation to just not happen, so we're able to self-destruct with no negative effects, effectively. Or, well, no negative effects that would otherwise lose us a bunch of time. Outside of really slow cutscene skipping, but that's almost negligible, right? Anyway, one thing that Fullest did want to set up there in Pascal's village was to grab the transporter and save. We'll see MT also do this a little bit, or in a little bit, as he approaches the village, but the object of saving in Pascal's village is to ensure our death warp to the village itself. So once Fullest picks up a quest item in the resistance camp, he's going to be looking to go back into Pascal's village to return that quest item, but the problem is that we only want to make the trip once. So the best bet is just to save at Pascal's village, pick up the quest item in Resistance Camp, and die at Resistance Camp, so that way we respawn back at Pascal's village, and we'll see Because Fullest did take a moose, unfortunately the travel time is just a couple seconds slower than if he had taken a moose, or a boar, I should say. I'm tired. I'm sorry. We'll see if MT grabs a boar here, but both runners are going to be looking to take a mandatory death. Quickly using that door in the resistance camp is very handy for canceling dialogue. And it looks like MT grabbed a boar, and fortunately getting a little bit of time save off of Fullest there. Fortunately, or I guess strangely rather, the boar hopping is actually slightly faster than the boar's actual sprint. Mostly because when the boar is traveling uphill, it hops very, very quickly. I'm sorry. And we're able to take advantage of that small little time save. But MT is unfortunately going to need more than just that to catch up to Fullest here.
This is an emergency transmission from the bunker.
Preemptively, there, Fullest, as he was exiting the transporter from dying itself, he canceled one of the active dialogues and immediately talked to Pascal. And it looks like MT is having a little bit of difficulty on that boar, but still good death as he respawns back into Pascal's village. But transitioning into the city ruins area here.
Yeah, no. Let's find another room.
Oh, that's going to be a little bit of a time loss there for Fullest. Little difficult to see, but what essentially happened there, as far as I understand it, Fullest's character got hit by the Engels machine's arm that was directly above him. For some reason, we believe that the hitbox for that attack has no vertical component, so it just goes from where the enemy's fist actually is all the way down to the ground. Which is a very strange phenomenon, but somehow the character is still hit by that attack, even though it's nowhere near him. Sort of a strange phenomenon, but either way, both runners are going to be looking to skip the first section of this fight here. Fullest getting the very nice execution through the hole that exists in that invisible wall. For whatever reason, that wall exists. I don't know why that hole exists in the two meshes between the building itself and the invisible wall, but it does. We're able to just hop through it for a very brief period of time if you have the correct angle on lockdown, and we'll see if MT is also able to get that. But Fullest is on a roll here, ladies and gentlemen. And Fullest was also able to take advantage of both pods there, Pod A and Pod C, using one program on one of them and then immediately switching to the other one to finish off the Engels machine. We'll see if MT is also able to jump through the hole. Unfortunately, isn't able to, so we're going to see a recovery strat here of, fortunately, jumping over the wall. For some reason, the developers did not choose to make that wall high enough.
These are the creatures that are in direct command of the machine life forms on this
It looks like we had a little bit of a hiccup there, but
this long and arduous war once and for all.
I'm not too certain on what happened there on MT's screen. It looks like he made it his way over the invisible wall. Yeah, that might be a little bit of a technical difficulty there from SpeedGaming's end. I don't know if that was SpeedGaming or if that was Twitch. We'll never know. But we're still going. Fullest here transitioning into negotiations. between Alan and Steve, beloved enemies of this game. I say that very lightly because, well, let's just say their hitboxes are kind of meh, in my experience at least. But anyway, Fullest and MT are going to be looking to take out these bosses, or at least Steve, at least to get a free level out of the boss itself, but the problem is that subsequent kills do not grant XP. So we could waste our time in the arena, or we can make use of that time and escape the arena. And we're going to be seeing that. We're going to be seeing that here from Fullest as he uses one of Eve's attacks to counterattack off of it and perform the rest of a high jump maneuver to scale the invisible wall. For some reason, that wall is just not tall enough to keep the player inside the arena, so we're just able to escape it. We don't really care about invisible walls, nor physical walls, nonetheless. Fullest is going to be clearing the hallway here from machines. He did not look to pick up the materials chest at the very end of that tunnel there. That's an interesting decision from Fullest, but I'm not too certain how confident he feels with a higher level sword, to my knowledge. Fullest usually opts to leave his sword at level 2. Just cleaning up the last few enemies there, but a specific chest in that hallway would effectively make our upgrade materials for a level 3 sword, I would not say guaranteed, but definitely have a better chance. It is still up to RNG as to whether or not you could upgrade your sword, but Fullest opting to not upgrade his sword from what it looked like. I could be wrong, but we'll see in a little bit here. MT was also able to escape the arena from what it looks like, which is very nice, but he might have a little bit of time extra there. I'm not too certain. It might cut off a little bit early for MT, so we'll see if he's able to also full clear the tunnel. Now, it is important for both runners during the section we're looking at for MT to not actually escape the tunnel itself, otherwise the area would deload and effectively soft lock, because the map would not exist beneath the player, and yet the player would be respawned to a point in space that there is no map for. So, fortunately, neither runner doing that. Is very safe and clean execution from both runners, clearing that tunnel there. Fullest making his way from the bunker to Pascal's village. And one thing that Fullest is going to be looking for here is another shopping section. He's going to need some recoveries, he's going to need some attack and possibly defensive buffs, but he's also going to be looking to equip some of his plug-in chips here. So he's going to sell some of his old potions and sell his system chips to make some space for some new offensive chips, opting to go for 0 defensive buffs. I like the risk. Very risky move there from Fullest, but he is possibly going to have some difficulty on what's called a mum skip. He might have enough height there to clear it. That's a very nice execution. Opting to not use a double lift off of those steps and actually use a different technique that uses a heavy hold to maintain his altitude on those steps and get a little bit of extra height, and do a simple high jump into a pod launch, pod spin, and then plunge off of the other side, skipping that cutscene entirely,
This must be the
which is
commercial
very,
structure Pascal was
very
talking about.
nice.
The records say it was once a facility known as a shopping center.
Yes, as Techtheus puts it in chat, a skip, 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 because there are multiple ways of skipping that particular cutscene, but all different techniques in and of itself. We did not see what chips Fullest equipped, but we possibly could see MT also opt to equip his chips. Here, MT is also going to do some shopping, getting rid of some of his system chips. I can't unfortunately see which chips either runner got, but MT opting to also go for strictly offensive buffs there. We'll see what chips Fullest has. So he's going to plug in the resilience chip and a crit +1 and a crit +0? Maybe? I think that's what Fullest had equipped there. If not, then 2 crit +0s is still a very nice setup for Fullest there. Unfortunately, we just saw MT go into the cutscene that I was just talking about, where the mother machine is scolding her son. Unfortunately, losing a little bit of extra time, but MT is losing a little bit of more time overall. Fullest might actually pull ahead even farther with some of these critical chips, but if MT can possibly get some critical chips in his inventory, then I think this is still a pretty even match. This will possibly come down to the late game. So, Fullest making his way through the forest area. He's looking to do a specific long jump off of one of these broken down aqueducts. Oof, unfortunately falling into the water, belly flopping too. Even better. 10 out of 10 from the Canadian judge. I'll be the judge of that. Anyway, I'm sorry. So Fullest is going to be doing this long jump here. Wow, that is a lot of crits I just saw on MT's screen. Oh boy. That crit potential though, I believe MT has a higher crit potential than Fullest right now. Critical chips in this game do work in such a way that the chips themselves grant you a certain percentage to critical hit off of, and that critical damage is almost stagnant, I believe, between all different crit chips, but when you do get a critical chip, you really want to be praying for those critical hits there. I believe both runners do have crits, but we'll have to see here if those extra crits do potentially put MT in a better position, but with both runners having crits, it'll be difficult to compete between the two. It'll almost be RNG. But very quickly here, we had really sort of skimmed this over from Fullest's perspective. He had clipped out of bounds from the forest area to climb the castle, and now he's fighting A2, one of the main bosses of A ending. Very annoying boss as well, in my opinion. Her attacks incredibly quick at that. MT also choosing to do the long jump across the chasm towards the castle. Very nice execution there. Lots of height too. I'm quite surprised. As Fullest makes minced meat out of A2. Very, very nice. Although it did look like he lost out on a couple of her attacks, but overall still pretty strong fight from Fullest. Let's see if MT also has any better luck from those extra crit chips. I'm hoping for some crazy crits out of MT here as he scales up the side of the castle, all out of bounds. Still very close between these two runners here. I'd say at least a minute or so between these two runners.
It'll be fast.
So Full's pulling ahead and into the village here. He's going to be making his way out to one of the longer sections of the run, our beloved Grun here. But first, I do want to pay attention to MT here in the A2 fight. Hopefully she doesn't give him too bad of an attack pattern, but he does need to be careful on his attack buffs here because of how
Why did you ask Pascal
the
about A2?
amount of damage that A2 actually deals to the player is quite crazy, especially when she is under the effects of taunt.
Machines are the enemy.
Her
Don't
damage
forget.
can definitely catch the player off guard, but still okay fight from MT there. We did see his timer dip into the red just very slightly. But given the circumstances, I'm not going to give him too much of a hard time there. Oof. That was a interesting execution there from Fullest. Now that he's clipped out of the back area of the resistance camp, he's looking to pick up a trigger there at the beginning of the flooded city area, but it looked like initially he had a little bit of a weird angle. He did not want that angle in particular because he would have otherwise clipped back in bounds, and that's something that he definitely did not want in order to save a good amount of time there. And we'll see that again on MT's screen as Fullest cleans up the flooded city shore fight here. The biggest enemy on the shore here is really this fidget spinner. I hate this fidget spinner so much. It takes me forever to take out that guy. But these guys making minced meat of, or minced machine parts? I shouldn't say meat. Minced machine parts out of these guys here. But Fullest transitioning into the really long shoot 'em up section that I'm going to ignore and promptly give MT some love here. What MT is going to do is transition into the resistance camp and quickly go into that jukebox area. That's going to cancel some active dialogue and cause it so that way he can immediately talk to an enemy. And we'd seen there he clipped out of the resistance camp area off of one of those boxes. Very convenient, if I do have to say, as MT goes down to the flooded city area, collects the same trigger we had seen earlier from Fullest. A little bit better execution there from MT, very nice, with the self-destruct falling out of bounds there as he gets respawned back up at the resistance camp with the trigger, and he's able to plunge down to the final area of the flooded city. We'll see a sort of similar strategy in the deep factory area a little bit later on in the run. That was a very nice crit there on the fidget spinner. That was pretty damn lucky. Given the circumstances, MT was able to take out that fidget spinner very, very quickly, having him taunted and getting a crit off of him definitely took a huge chunk out of that fidget spinner there from MT. But if you guys in chat definitely have any questions, now is the time to ask them, because we have some time to ourselves here in Grun. We have a good, I'd say 8 or so minutes for Grun. Basically a shoot 'em up section with very little fighting and very little tech overall. Not exactly the most exciting part of the run, but if you want to get something to drink and stand up and stretch or something, definitely do that now if you wish to. Why are you so sad all the time, Panpipes? I don't know. Can somebody hug Panpipes for me? I love you, Panpipes. Why does Grun not have a skip yet? I mean, I hope we do eventually have a skip for this section, but unfortunately, a good amount of time has been put into trying to find something within the section that could be skipped. Unfortunately, we don't really have anything, any sort of conventional means of skipping this section that we know of. Perhaps somebody out there does or has an idea. There is actually a pretty tall bounty for finding a particular skip for this shoot 'em up section here.
Is that a machine?
I forget how much exactly, but it's well over about 2,000 US dollars, which is quite impressive from the NieR Automata community for putting together that kind of money for a specific trick, although creative minds and strong minds alike have tried and failed, unfortunately. In some respects, I do wonder, Blue. I do wonder what would happen if this particular section was skipped, although it's really difficult to say, because at least in other categories and longer categories, we do take advantage of a pretty major sequence break, but unfortunately in A ending, we don't really get to see anything like that. We don't get to take advantage of a skip known as Meat Spin or Early Tower for the, I guess, PG of the group. Anyway, unfortunately, we don't get to take advantage of that skip in particular in A ending, but we do take advantage of it in longer categories. And in that skip itself, we actually do skip like 5 chapters or something towards the end of the game, which is pretty bonkers, if you ask me. Funny enough, that skip was found by a casual player by the name of Apple for You, who had approached the speedrunning community and was like, hey, this exists. I think that skip was found shortly before I joined the Discord. Which, by the way, if you're interested in learning NieR Automata as a speedrun, or even picking it up as like a regular casual game, I definitely highly recommend it. So would anybody in chat, but we're all biased anyway, so definitely pick up this game if you have not picked it up already. It should really be in your shopping cart, and you should be buying it, and you should be playing it right now. It's amazing. But we do have a Discord, discord.nierspeedrun.com. If you are interested in speedrunning this, I highly recommend it.
Electromagnetic interference eliminated. Preparing for satellite laser strike.
Oh, come on! It's got an electromagnetic barrier over its whole body?
This is a very enjoyable game, although we may be entirely biased.
Having trouble over there?
Moon 2 Teehee.
Hunter Squadron deploying
Anyway.
out of North 12th C Defense HQ. I'm the commanding officer.
But in terms of this
Don't
tournament,
worry, we'll take
I'm
it from
quite interested to see how either of these runners will do later on in the late game of this,
I have an idea. You and I should meet up at the spot I just
because they do have a good number of skips ahead of them. I think I've said this before for a couple different matches as well, but the success rate from some of these later skips has been quite high given the adrenaline rush these runners are in towards the later end of the game here. They do have a good amount of combat to go before then, and we'll get around to some of the skips that they do when they happen as well, but they're going to be pretty tight here in terms of time save. MT is really going to have to pull something pretty spectacular in order to make some of the time back up from Fullest here, or Fullest. I'm not saying anything, but Fullest is on a roll here in his run,
That enormous
and I am
machine is an ancient weapon.
thoroughly impressed.
It was designed to help annihilate the androids, but it wound up going out of control.
Fullest is the master of the D-Rust PB from his live streams, and it is hilarious how the man is able to take a break and come back to this game and just PB over and over again.
Ruined it deep in the ocean, but it seems to be searching for a way back. Huh.
But Fullest is about, I'd say, 2/3 of the way through
You keep that thing right where it is,
Engels,
okay?
or not Engels, sorry, Grun. My mind is going bananas, but actually no, closer to halfway through.
9S is leaving the front lines. Proposal.
But
9S should be reported
again,
to command as a deserter.
unfortunately, the idea here is to just clear out these enemies as quickly as we can, but for a good majority of these sort of waves is sort of an auto-scroller between when they spawn, which unfortunately is not the greatest mechanic, I would say, in this. These shoot-'em-up sections could definitely have been a lot more creative, and that's coming from someone who's put a lot of time into this game. Both these runners and both a good number of runners in the community have put hundreds and hundreds of hours into this game, learning this game inside and out, and the quirks are present, but it definitely does not take away from the overall gameplay and experience, I do have to say. Is SD the best mechanic? I think SD is the best mechanic out of all of them. SD standing for self-destruct. And it is definitely the Swiss Army knife of NieR Automata. You can use it for anything. You can use it for almost everything. Boss fights and movement, all the same. It deals a ridiculous amount of damage, and unfortunately in A ending, we do not take advantage of it too much, but we might actually see it from Fullest. I'm not going to say anything, but we might see some extra sort of strategies later on towards the very end of the run from Fullest. I'm not too certain how practiced he is on that, but we'll have to see. Fortunately, in more ways than one, self-destruct is an amazing ability that we can do as a player. But Fullest making his way up to Core 3 here. Fortunately, I think the one thing that's nice about the speedrun in this current section here in Grun is how nice the music lines up with this final core here. Very sort of upbeat and amazing music at that. Did I ever mention how amazing this music is? Because it's amazing. Well put together and beautiful score from NieR Automata and team from Platinum Games. Definitely knocked it out of the park with the music. Just out of Grun, thank God we can wake up and do some amazing gameplay here. One of the first things that Fullest did right out of the gate there, he wanted to displace 2B to a later part of the flooded city, and by doing so, he jumped into the water at a specific distance areas. In doing so, he's able to put 2B back onto the ground at a later position than or at an earlier position than he would have been if he had just run around and walked the normal way. Walking is, unfortunately, not as fast as some of these displacements here, but Fullest does have something quite heavy upon his shoulders here, clipping for Copied City skip. Copied City clip, I should say. But it looks like Fullest is going to be trying to use keyboard and mouse on his approach into Copied City clip. That did take a good couple attempts, and wow, he's quite far away from the elevator there. Effectively, he was trying to find a very precise angle in that sort of structure of concrete and the wall there, so that way he could clip right through and plunge on down to the Copied City elevator. There's a very swaggy pod launch there into the Copied City Discovery cutscene. Shoutouts to Blue Metal for that one. And it looks like MT is also out of Grun as well. Not too far behind Fullest here, but definitely a good amount of time to catch up on. If Fullest messes up any of these tricks here, he could definitely be set back a good amount of time. First try mansplaining. Very nice there. He clipped out of the arena that he was constrained in to fight Adam 2, but fortunately we can escape that arena and skip some of the dialogue that Adam has put upon us right now. He's able to go back to the elevator that we had just come from, and quickly, in a little bit here, he's going to be waiting for a specific time for when one dialogue block ends and one dialogue block begins. Fullest punches and dashes backwards into the elevator, so that way, as soon as Adam says only then, he skips the next dialogue block and continues to the fight. Conveniently, the fight respawns you back into the arena, so we don't need to run anywhere. That was a very nice clip from MT on Copied City. Saved a good amount of time over Fullest, but we'll have to see on how effective MT's strategy for mansplaining was. Fullest did not lose any time to the skip itself, but we'll see how MT performs on the mansplaining skip as well. And some of this combat here from Fullest is going to be quite crazy as well. Given these crits here, he could get lucky on some of them, although he is at the mercy of Adam RNG here. Fullest making full use of that slow-mo ability, taking Adam's attacks and slowing them down very considerably, so that way he can open up Adam's well, that's not stream safe to say, but open up Adam's hitboxes and basically stretch out that... Sorry, let me just stop talking. Moving on to an enemy's dialogue skip there. Very quickly, Fullest was able to talk with Computer Girl, skip over Commander's dialogue, and
Pascal, can you hear me?
cause the active dialogue for us to cancel out, and he was able to pick up some items from one of the vendors there. He picked up some skill salves that will decrease the cooldown on his pod program lasers, which is very handy for later on in the run. Very nice execution there for MT in mansplaining. Again, not losing any time, but he is again at the mercy of Adam attack RNG. Fortunately, getting a kick right off the start. But we'll see how MT makes use of some of his attacks there. It is actually possible for Adam to go invulnerable or untargetable for some of his attacks. So we're trying to not get those down either. Fullest making full use of technique that Tech Theist had
Even you.
almost designed there, using a double lift off of the staircase to hop over one of the walls, and conveniently position Fullest's camera underneath Tubi's skirt, pushing him ever so slightly closer to the factory. We'll see here this very quick motion for MT as he walks off the mat with the computer girl dialogue active, skipping the dialogue for Commander, as well as talking to Devila and Popola, picking up... Oh, unfortunately we don't want that weapon, we do want the skill salves, making the cooldown faster for the final sections there. Looks like Fullest is taunting us there. He was about to self-destruct, but decided against it, denying the people to booty. But we do actually have to but we do have to wait for that priest machine to open up the elevator, about 18 or so seconds of pure waiting. Both runners here still close to each other. However, if Fullest goes into Deep Factory here and messes up anything, he could put MT ever so slightly closer. Although, it'll be a miracle if something were to happen here. One strategy that Fullest is going to be looking for here is to go to one specific corner of the Mook's room here, as we've called it, and clip out of the arena. That's going to make it so that way the machines that actually spawn in there reset. So because the elevator that Fullest had just touched there needs a specific number of those enemies killed in order to activate, the game somehow actually triggers that elevator to be opened once we sort of reset the room, which is very handy and very consistent in clearing out that area there. Very nice first try 9S clip from Fullest there. Very clean execution overall. Clipping out of bounds there essentially makes it so that way he resets the instance of the elevator, so that way he's able to exit the elevator, re-enter it, and go back up to this throne room that we're in right now. And what he's looking to do is get from this really, really high room that he's in right now and clip all the way down to the bottom of the Deep Factory, pick up a specific trigger, so that way he can progress through the rest of the Deep Factory area. Looks like he missed it the first time, but he is going to try again. Got it the second try, that's still very nice, but he does need to be careful on some of these out-of-bounds floors here. Sucking Tubi's feet in can be a little scary, and fortunately good execution to the finish of Deep Factory skip. That saves a whopping minute 45 or so in comparison to running around the Deep Factory area itself. Very clean, very nice skip from our resident glitch hunter, Marky. Blessed be Marky. As we see MT approach the same hurdles that we had just seen Fullest go through as well. Very interesting clip there from MT. It took him a couple different tries, but still overall very nice. Clipping out of that room is much more consistent than actually having to fight the enemies, which is super convenient and super nice, because we don't have to deal with any sort of attack RNG from any of these enemies. And because Fullest is hanging around on that bridge there. He doesn't have to deal with any of the boss's attacks for now, in this invulnerable state that the boss is in, but he will be dealing damage to the boss in just a minute there. Again, first try clip for MT on the 9S room clip. Very handy indeed. Making his way back up to the high above room in the Deep Factory. He's going to be using that to pick up the trigger down at a specific point in the Deep Factory, transitioning to Fullest here. He's going to be damaging down Soshi quite quickly here, aiming to do a 0 cycle, but it looks like he's going to get 1 attack. Ooh, MT unfortunately clipping back in bounds. That's not what MT was looking for. That's quite unfortunate. That's going to still cost him a little bit of time. He did perform half of the skip, but unfortunately, because he did not respawn back at the top of that room, he is going to lose a good amount of time here compared to Fullest. That was a couple of attacks extra that Fullest got out of Soshi, but still clean fight. Overall, nice fight from Fullest. MT is going to be looking to do a specific trick here. A little scary with no minimap there. Unfortunately, fell down from that area. He was still able to make it through Crushers 2 quite well. You can actually traverse Crushers 2 above the Crushers themselves. However, it is a little tricky to tell where 2B is because she's actually off screen. Ouch. But on full screen, you will recognize that same out of bounds from the Prologue area. That is very handy that we actually traverse the same sort of path that we do earlier in Prologue. Very nice execution from Fullest there. It looked like Fullest did take the regular route, although there are a couple different out of bounds in that one location alone, which is very handy. And Fullest definitely making his way into the main sort of boss rush area to clean out the last fights in A-ending. Definitely pretty exciting here for Fullest. He's going pretty strong. I'm curious as to how many golds Fullest has on Live Split right now. That opening section in today's race from Fullest was definitely a banger. I'm pretty excited by that. I'm quite curious as to seeing what Fullest pulls this run out as. There's not too much time left on Fullest's run here, so definitely exciting to see what that finish time is. He might have a good chance of PBing, if I do have to say. MT close on approach there to the Soshi fight here. He's basically just waiting for a music trigger to happen until the boss is able to be damaged. But he's making good use of slow-mo there to slow the boss down enough so that way the boss only takes 1 attack to go down, and getting the phase transition immediately, going and finishing the fight. Now you can definitely see, it's difficult to see on Fullest's perspective there, but those crits are pretty gnarly, dealing a crazy amount of damage to those machines there. Fortunately, none of those stubbies spawned behind Fullest, which is very handy because it kept all the enemies grouped up underneath his damage glitch, so constant damage was being put onto those stubbies, and his positioning was such that none of them spawned behind him. Fullest making his way onto Bokushi. Sorry. He's sort of stuck in a different leg there. That's going to be unfortunate. Perfect dodging onto... Wow, that was quite lucky. Onto one of those right-hand side legs is quite scary, although it seems like he pulled it through. Fullest did take a good amount of damage there from Bokushi, which was a little bit scary between the different damage values of the electricity and one of Bokushi's attacks. We did see the MT drop down and void out of bounds, unfortunately, costing him a little bit more time as Fullest just wrecks his way through core one, sorry. Very swaggy choice of fishing there. I'm ultimate swag. Choosing to fish is rather an interesting choice there, and interesting animations as a result.
Pascal? Come in, Pascal!
Anyway, both runners making their way to two relatively major fights here. Fullest making his way to Core 2, and MT not too far behind to the Burning Resistance camp. Now, one thing that Fullest is going to be looking for here out of Core 2 is a very quick cycle in how he needs to make sure that the boss is taunted by rapidly tapping his flashlight inputs, or input rather, and definitely making good use of that slow-mo ability so that way the boss spends more time in his spinning swords. Very clean zero cycle from Fullest there. Lots of crits in there too that definitely helped him out in his damage output. This is looking to be 127, I would say. It can definitely be way lower than 127 if Fullest is fast on Eve here. I'm quite impressed by this run here from Fullest. MT clearing out Burning Resistance camp here on that final machine there. Very quick fight from MT as well. So Fullest is going to be aiming to deal an incredible amount of damage to Eve's first phase there. He does need to be careful on his HP, which is very sort of scary there. Without having defensive buffs, both runners do need to be quite careful on their HP, in that these enemies can really take them out quite quickly in about 2 hits or so. Fullest attempting to go for a phase skip here, skipping phase 2 before Eve reaches full HP, which is very nice. Skips a couple of seconds. Very handy to take advantage of. And MT also self-destructing on Bokushi, getting a little bit of extra XP. Now that Eve is in phase 3 on Fullest's perspective here, it's going to be an interesting thing to see if Fullest attempts to do a self-destruct technique here, in that he needs Eve to reach a specific HP threshold for self-destruct to damage him enough to transition to the next phase that definitely skips a good amount of combat. Dealing all that damage all at once is very, very handy. He needed to make sure he was buffed, Eve was taunted, and that he was close enough to the boss to deal the amount of damage to close out Eve phase 3. Fullest needs to be careful here on his HP, but Eve phase 4 is going to be a pretty quick fight here. Eve staying exactly where he is, not even moving, clearing out very quickly here. 126.40, I'd say. That is a very fast run. Wow. Quickly transitioning here to MT. he is clearing out the enemies by Pascal's village here, but he also might be looking to do the zero cycle on Core 2. He needs to make sure that Core 2 is taunted and that he has a good enough damage output on
What
the
happened here?
core itself. Unfortunately, he did kill it as it was escaping the
It's Eve.
damage glitch, but as soon as
If we
he
destroy
did,
this presiding unit, will
he
it
ended
stop
up
the
killing
rest?
Core 2. Very nice zero cycle
I need you
from
to locate Eve's
MT.
current position.
Unfortunately, he did not get the dialogue skip, which is
We'll
very,
take care of Eve.
very
You just worry about keeping the
unfortunate. He
village
did lose a
okay?
couple seconds as a result of that, but now entering Eve as a result there.
Everything must die!
Oh boy.
Why did you kill
I think we'll just close out with MT here, and we'll get both runners in for a post-run commentary, but MT does need to be careful here on Eve. Eve can deal a good amount of damage to MT if he's not careful. He does not have any defensive buffs, making short work of phase 1, but we'll see if MT opts to go
What is it?
to skip. He is buffing up and he's slow-moing. He does need to make sure that he has enough DPS on Eve, so that way he slows down the animations of Eve actually healing up, so that way when Eve, or rather when the dialogue that's happening reaches a certain point and Eve is not at full HP, oof, unfortunately he did skip, or he did not manage to skip phase 2, which would cost him a couple more seconds extra. Unfortunate. Quite unfortunate there. Did lose him a couple extra seconds as a result. Transitioning into phase 3. We'll see if MT also tries for a similar strategy from Fullest, but I do feel like MT is going to play this a little bit safer. Considering that MT has these skill selves here, he's going to make good use of them. That was quite scary. Being on low HP into that double wave attack is quite scary to go into. MT does need to be careful on some of these attacks here. Without defensive buffs, Eve can really take him down quickly if he's not careful. But it looks like Eve is giving MT a little bit of a difficult time there. He might... Yes! Very nice there from MT. Eve was quite close to the ground, fortunately, so that was a very nice execution from MT. He does need to be careful on HP, holy... Wow. For a split second there, MT could have walked into one of those bullets, and that would have been quite unfortunate, but fortunately he did manage to save it. Eve, unfortunately, being a little bit of a meanie here, moving all the way around the arena, not giving MT that much of an opportunity to damage the boss. All he needs is just a little bit more damage on him, and he should be golden here. Oof, unfortunately, Eve moving a little bit farther away than what MT would have wanted, but finishing strong to the finish here. About 130.50, I would say.
But you'll lose you, the you that exists at this very moment.
Guess so.
And
We can't upload this corrupted data to the...
we'll see if we can get the runners in for a post-run commentary or a post-run analysis here. That was an incredible race, if I do have to say. But an interesting and quite varied run from these two guys tonight. Fullest and MT, congratulations.
Hi.
I
MT,
think-
you're scary.
Congrats, Fullest. You got a good PB, right? Was that like
Yeah,
around a
PB
minute or
by
so?
over a minute.
Over a minute.
A minute 13. I had over 30 seconds to save on the last split, and I was already 38 seconds ahead. So, yeah.
That's awesome, dude. Congrats.
Thanks. Oh my goodness. And you were scary. I was watching the restream, and every time I looked over, it seemed like you were like just behind me. So I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
the entire run.
I played like complete garbage. I'm really frustrated with that run.
Oh,
As soon as I got punches, I was like, oh man, okay.
That's true.
It's gonna be one of these runs that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, congrats.
But even
Yeah,
still, both of you guys were quite close to each other all through the run.
Yeah, I was,
Even at that.
like I said, I was spooked because it always seemed like MT was just a little bit behind me whenever I looked over. So, I guess that means you have the potential to PB, right, MT? If that was a trash run, I'm scared to see what you'll do on a good run.
Yeah, I mean that was like, yeah, my PB is like a 29:57, so easy PB if I just don't play like crap for one run.
Yeah, just got to put it together. I feel you, because that's how it was before this run. Jeez.
Unfortunately, a lot of things really just have to sort of line up together in order for some of these times to be pulled together. But
Dude, that killing that quest bot in the pit. Oh my goodness.
I do have to say, I was excited. I never saw that, and I never thought that crap was possible.
No,
But
I mean, it's totally doable. New Game Plus does it.
I know New Game Plus does it, but I didn't know it was possible to both damage the machines that were in that sort of grouping, but also throw a damage glitch that hits the guy that falls from the sky. Never in my mind. I have never seen that before.
I got pretty lucky with that, and I golded that split by like 4 to 5 seconds. It was crazy.
Oh yeah, easily. Being able to take out that quest spot and have the remaining of that dialogue start faster is like crazy. That's gonna be crazy luck dependent to get.
One day we'll get a manip so we can get that every time.
Potentially. But very awesome runs tonight by both of these guys. I do have to say, fellas, that run, I probably have already tooted your horn way too many times this commentary, but geez, man. From my perspective, everything went perfectly. Everything went swimmingly. Although I bet Kanaris can
I got
find
hacked
where
3 times in Beauvoir. I don't know, man.
I don't know.
I lost 19 seconds that split.
2 minutes behind world record, by the way.
Ugh, yeah. 2 entire minutes. World record's impossible.
But if you guys have anything else to mention, I think we'll be transitioning on out.
I'd just like to huge shout outs to Ethereum for commentating.
Thank you.
Thanks, dude. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Good job, Myth. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys running as well. Exclamation point R in the chat to check out both of these guys' Twitch channels. They're both awesome guys. And thank you to SpeedGaming for allowing us to host this tournament on SpeedGaming. And definitely check out some of the extra matches that we have for the remainder of the tournament here in Phase 2, double elimination. We still have a good couple of weeks remaining in some of these matchups here going into rounds 2 for the winner's bracket and round 1 for the loser's bracket. Thank you again, everybody, for stopping by. !NA in chat if you are interested for the bracket and schedule of the tournament. And with that, I think we'll say goodnight.